Okay. Rob Knill, Emma Carlyon and Stuart Foster. We're here to talk about the emergency plan for Chacewater. Bit of background, I chair the Community Area Partnership for Roseland and Truro, also chair the Mining Village Regeneration Group as well. But here we're talking about Chacewater, what we did to prepare ourselves for an emergency plan and why we did it. And I think it's important for us to talk about brass tacks, really. And so we're going to give you a practical demonstration as why we went about our business. This is the reason we looked at our emergency plan. 2015, 2016, over the winter, I'm probably led to believe that it was some sort of flood warning given us, but I totally ignored it like everybody else. And on the left-hand side, you'll see a couple of little holes that have been penetrated through a field into a public right-of-way. It came down a public right-of-way, which I'm very fond of, went out onto the road, came down a place called Cox Hill at about a 30-degree angle, kept on motoring, picked up some more flood water that was coming down from a place called Scoria. Then it ended up in my driveway. And that's me. Silly southwester hat, but it was still raining at that point. And on the right-hand side, you're looking at a slightly swollen occasional watercourse. On the left-hand side, that's the watercourse developing a bit more. In the middle, that grate there is a place called Station Road, and it's a grill which is supposed to ensure a lot of the debris doesn't go under the houses that sit in Chacewater. Anybody who's been in Chacewater, you'll know that we've got two problems. One is traffic. The other one you didn't know too much about is the fact that we've got a watercourse running under the village. So that's supposed to collect everything. Trouble is, you can see it rising now. On the left-hand side, there's a couple of houses. On the right-hand side, there's an old chapel that's got 6 apartments in it. The two pictures you see on the right-hand side there, that's supposed to be a tunnel. It took me about an hour, me again. It took me an hour to clear it. And actually, you can start to see the tunnel on the right-hand side there. Then we're looking at what happened afterwards and the consequences of what happened from what one parish councillor and the chairman at the time said it was a gift of God that we'd flooded. He was a farmer. I didn't believe him. I wrote a paper, actually, to tell him that it wasn't such a good gift of God. It was a big mistake. On the left-hand side, that's the consequence of flooding. That's a whole load of sludge on a place called the Terrace. And we then had to clean it up with the support of Cornwall Council and Cormac. The middle bit there just identifies the fact that actually, if you don't prepare for things, it's going to happen. It's going to hit you some way. That's meant to be a drain in the middle there. And there's the drain just showing itself. And that's taken recently, relatively recently, actually. On the right-hand side, that's a pipe into a field. It hasn't been cleaned for about a decade. It has now. You have to be aware and accepting the fact that actually, whatever we're going to do, we have to do it ourselves. Things have been devolved down to parishes now. And so you're not going to see the white horse, the white knight on the white horse coming over the horizon and sorting all out for you. So to an extent, you've got to take it into your own hands to sort things out. And that's what we chose to do. So we did adopting the keep it simple, stupid policy. I just basically got an old picture of a plan of Chacewater. And we identified that there's a bit of a watercourse, an occasional watercourse that comes down from the mining area at Wheel Busy. And that's what I identified. And I thought about it and I said, what we need to do is identify where our nodal points are, where the catch points are that sit under the roads, the slight little avenues and stuff like that, that do tend to get blocked up. What issues we've got to address as we go along. So on the left-hand side, I used the Report It tool to report every single grip and gully that we had in our parish and get it cleaned out the first time. And we send 50% of it we cleaned out ourselves. So we started to realise that actually we drain off water very, very easily when we live in a valley. We needed the volunteers. And the volunteers rose up like a phoenix from the ashes. A few come. Every year we have a clean out of our occasional watercourse, the Leet, and we have 6 or 7 volunteers pitch up. First week in January, we clear it all out. We make sure every single underpass is cleared out as well, and it works. And there we are. We're supported by things like the Cormac tool trolley that pitches up by miracle, and we actually ask Cormac to come and give us a hand occasionally as well. And if we're going past a social housing estate, we ask the rangers to come out and help us like they're going to do on the 6th of January next year. And that's how much rubbish we took out of about 15 to 20 yards of a public right of way that went into a watercourse area. So it's important to get your volunteers on side. And actually those volunteers came in 2016, 2017, they're still with us today. We had to demonstrate to the parish and the people, the wider audience, and the parish council themselves, the team that I was a part of, that actually was important. So we introduced our neighbourhood development plan. It took us a couple of years to do that. But importantly, part of that is a local landscape character assessment where you go out your parish, you identify 13 different locations, you look at 360-degree route around where you stood, and you identify where the population is, where the water comes from, where the transport is, all that type of stuff. So you document it all. We documented it all, and we came up with this little, very, very simple picture of our parish. We call it the wedge, for obvious reasons, I think. But the blue tells us all about where we are in terms of a steep-sided valley. Okay, where the steep-sided valley comes into the village core. The little avenues where you see there, the little yellow bits, left and right, that is our flood zone. If we have one, we don't need to have one, is the truth of it. So where are you now? Well, we identified the agencies that can help us: Cormac, the Environment Agency, Tregothon Estates. Don't always get good press, but actually we can give them good press. We formed a working relationship with all those organisations. We use the reported online system. I can't recommend it highly enough. If you've got, it's not only for potholes, it's for cleaning out the gullies, the grips, all that type of stuff. Find that people can do things. Okay. Had a feel for what we needed to do, paperwork engagement. Find the people that are prepared to take responsibility. That's me. I'm the chairman. That's Emma. That's Stuart. People that are prepared to do something for paper, investigate it, sort it through, identify what you need for your emergency plan. People that are capable of delivering and writing an emergency plan are key as well. Importantly, get your parish council on side. Some parish councils aren't fully aware of it. You need to get them on side. I'm not going to go to Emma now. He's going to talk to you about how we prepared our plan.
Good morning. What I should say is that all major emergencies are dealt with by the emergency services, local authorities, utilities and voluntary agencies in a combined response. That means the first port of call are the professionals. But we know, and we've seen in Valencia, we've seen ourselves, that in extreme conditions such as heavy snow, flooding, there is the possibility that the emergency services may not be able to reach us in time, and that we as a community will have to be the initial response and rely on the local people. And this is where a community emergency plan can help a community prepare for an emergency and minimise the impact it can have on the effect to them. Communities have the advantage of having access to people or resources that allow them to respond to specific incidents quickly and may affect those specific emergencies which affect their locality. Details of the roles these people can play and how they can be contacted are included in the emergency plan. The emergency plan allows key information to be available to the whole community when it's needed in an emergency. There's no point in Rob being away in Sweden with all the information when the emergency occurs. What you need is a plan with all the information there, which is accessed by everybody in the community. And that's what a community emergency plan is all about. The first thing to do is to take control of the situation. And that's what Rob has explained, is that we saw there was a problem and we needed to actually take control for ourselves of what we needed to do to identify and mitigate the flooding in our main instance. The first task is to form a team. And in our case, what we did is we went to the council and we formed a team of councillors who had experience of emergencies. Rob has been involved in emergency planning for many years, his work. I worked as coroner and was involved in the county emergency plan. And Stuart is an architect and is fully aware of the difficulties in dealing with flooding and architectural issues. We then liaised with the three major organisations that deal with community emergency plans. And they are Cornwall Council Emergency Planning Department, and they provided information on their website on how to develop a plan. They provide support via their community link officer, and there is an emergency plan generic template on their website with guidance. They also provided us with examples of other parishes' emergency plans. What they can't do is write the plan for you. There is also the Cornwall Community Resilience Forum. This is a multi-agency organisation which is a conglomerate, includes Cornwall Council Emergency Plan and for example, Cornwall Community Flood Forum, but they are a sort of umbrella organisation. And then the third major organisation that assisted us was Cornwall Community Flood Forum, who supports households, businesses and communities to become better prepared ahead of flooding. The forum can provide examples of community flood plan templates, case studies and resources and training for volunteers. And you've heard that they trained us and our volunteers this year. The forum can also put you in touch with established groups and others who have written plans so you can learn from their experiences. And those are the contact links, and we can provide you with those contacts if you want a copy for your parish. As I said, the emergency plan toolkit is available on Cornwall. Is that yours? Oh. So just shortly, how we created our plan was first we got together a number of people, and that was the three of us, and we've got other volunteers on the council. We also then got the templates from the Cornwall community, from Cornwall Council and others. We then assessed the risks, when you've heard that Rob has told you about the mapping, and then we looked at how we can mitigate those. And you've heard how what we do is we clear the stream in winter. We make sure all the dikes and things around our parishes are cleared by Cormac so that we don't have surface runoff. And we then have put that into our plan. So I'll hand over to Stuart to explain how we actually wrote the plan.
Yeah, we took quite a lot of advice from Cornwall Council emergency planning team, and the toolkit was very helpful. We were also given examples of other community groups' emergency plans, and we actually ended up merging different parts of those documents to suit our own situation. So I think actually it's quite useful to give you an idea of how we did that by running you through what's in the emergency plan toolkit that's available on the Cornwall Council website. It has a number of different aspects that can help community groups who are looking to create an emergency plan. It tells you where you can get support. There is the emergency plan template that's provided on the website, guidance on the kind of training you might need, where you can get it, what funding is available, and how you might get that. And also what you need to do about your volunteers, who are very important. We obviously already had some volunteers who'd done the early work in 2015-16. And also you need to consider the insurance side and equipment. In terms of support, I think, as we've mentioned, really the three main sources of support that we've been able to use has been Cornwall Council, through the team there, and also the website does actually mention a really good point that you should make use of your community link officers. We've had some engagement with the Environment Agency, and that's another excellent source of advice and help. But I think obviously one of the biggest sources of help that we've had has been this institution, the Cornwall Community Flood Forum. They've been invaluable in helping us with advice and supporting us through the whole process of creating our emergency plan. The template that's available on the website, it has a number of different sections to it. It tells you how your plan should work. The 6 sections within the template, section 1 deals with things that you need to do in the case of an emergency, and the first things, and that's really important, that you might have people who are not massively aware, they perhaps aren't the people who wrote the plan, but if they can refer to that document, then they know what they need to do when something bad happens. Section 2 covers how an emergency plan should be activated, and that's important for us because the core team is actually Chacewater Parish councillors, but we also have other volunteers who are not councillors, and any one of those might be the people who need to activate the plan. The third section lists all the contact details, which once again very important, and that was something we took some time to try and find out who needs to know, who needs to be told. And section 4 lists key locations, resources, and skills that you can draw upon within an emergency. We are lucky within the parish that we have a number of different venues, and we've been able to designate those in the case of an emergency. Section 5 deals with hazards and people who are vulnerable, and Section 6 is the flood plan itself, which is based on the Environment Agency template. And all of these came together to create our emergency plan, which is now in its version 1.2 as of this last month. And so other things that we've been doing, we had some training earlier this year, and the things that are really important is risk awareness, first aid, and health and safety. We did flood warning training earlier this year for our core team, and one of the things we'll be doing soon is to get more training for our group of volunteers that is now starting to form. There's a number of places you can go to. Communities Prepared has a lot of training to do with sort of management and leadership roles in those situations. Volunteer Cornwall has training to do with the actual aspect of having volunteers and insurances and things like that. The British Red Cross obviously is excellent for first aid, and Cornwall Community Flood Forum also has training of which we ourselves have partaken. Funding is a slightly more complicated issue in that the guidance that's available on the Cornwall Council website is actually a little bit out of date. And looking through it just recently myself, I found that a lot of the links that itself goes to the gov.uk website are no longer relevant. Some of those organisations have disappeared. But amongst some that I found that are still worthwhile looking at is the IDOCS Grant Finder, also from Cornwall Community Flood Forum itself, the Lotteries Community Fund, and of course you can always go to your Cornwall councillor for their community chest grants. As far as volunteers and insurance go, there are 3 documents of worth on that website. There's a guidance document from the council about how to make the most of your volunteers. There's also a lot of advice on insurance, and it does also mention the impact of the Social Action Responsibility and Heroism Act, SARA, which in the main means that community volunteers working within an emergency are unlikely to get in a situation where they might be criticised or have legal implications. But notwithstanding that, insurance is important. Unfortunately, being a parish council, we already had insurances in place for volunteers, but some groups might not have that, and it's important that they look into insurance. As far as volunteers go, we put quite a lot of effort into getting people involved. We held a community engagement day earlier this year for a great many issues within our parish, one of which we put up posters for our emergency plan, which was evolving at that time. And we had people who were interested and actually gained a few people signing up as potential volunteers on that day. We also have a monthly parish magazine called What's On, and put a poster into that a few months ago, which you can see on the screen there, and also provided a commentary on what we'd been doing. And finally, that brings us to equipment. We're just now at the point where we're looking to obtain equipment, and we've been lucky to get some funding through Cornwall Community Flood Forum, which has translated into us looking to get waterproof steel toe cap boots, gloves. We've looked to get high-vis jackets, walkie-talkies, weatherproof clipboard covers, whistles, waterproof trousers, emergency signage, and also headlamps. All of these things are potentially important to a community group, and it's things that you need to consider as part of developing your emergency team. And so that really brings us to the end of it, which is to say, we have got to the point where we think we have helped ourselves quite well, and we're continuing to do so. But the question of how can communities help themselves has to be different for every parish and every location. And I implore all parishes looking to do this kind of work to ask those questions and engage with their residents to come up with the best answers.